Hello, everyone. It's Quincy and Scott here again. We'll bring you another episode on the topic that is relevant to all the sellers, specifically to people doing arbitrage. That is, we need to, at one point or the other, when selling on Amazon, Amazon will come down and to you and looking for a proof of your sourcing inventory from a legit source. Or so as a part of, if you have IP complaint or inauthenticity issues, you need to prepare to submit the evidence that are acceptable to Amazon. So this video, Scott will help us understand what is the proper way to prepare receipt or invoice before we submit to Amazon. So Scott, you want to take it away?
I think we should maybe back up just a second before we jump in and talk about the nitty-gritty details of invoices or receipts. And, obviously in most cases for people who are doing RA, they're going to only have receipts. Maybe sometimes when you're doing OA, you'll have invoices, and we can get into the details of that. And of course, I've given you a PDF that you can provide for anybody who requests it, and we'll touch on some of that today. But the most important thing I think to keep in mind is, why is Amazon asking you for the invoice or the receipt? And it's because they want to make sure that you have a legitimate supply of inventory, legitimate supply chain. And so that's the most important thing to keep in mind. How do I do this, or how do I do that, or how do I fix this, or how do I address this issue? But make sure that your in inventory has extreme integrity. What you get to sell on Amazon, it's the lifeblood of your account. It's the same thing as what you eat and drink, as part of your body, and how you keep your health up. It's the same kind of critical level, and you really just don't want to sell junk, just like you don't want to eat junk, and you don't want to get it from illegitimate sources. So just that alone, I think, will help for you to make sure that you have the right receipts or invoices to back up what you've purchased, to prove that it's new, that it's real, that it's genuine, that it's not counterfeit, that it came from a real supplier. Those are the things that you want to be able to keep in mind as you start to deal with these things, at least from this point on going forward. There are a lot of sources for inventory that, in my view, just aren't really appropriate for Amazon if you want to stay out of trouble and keep your account healthy. You could sell them on all kinds of other platforms. It could be eBay, Craigslist, Facebook, whatnot. There's so many different options where those products might be good products and they might have good profit, and they're just aren't very appropriate for Amazon. So I think that's good to keep in mind. And if I were in your position as a seller, I would go back through my entire list of active inventory and make sure that it's worth it. Make sure that you can prove everything that's live in your account today is something that you have an invoice or receipt for, so that that doesn't cause problems for you down the road if it sells and somebody's unhappy, or there's some kind of buyer complaint, or Amazon wants to know where you got such and such. That's, I think, the most important thing to keep in mind. The rest of the stuff is mechanics, it's patience, it's trial and error, and we'll get into that.
I think that's a very good reminder. So there's so many ways to get inventory these days, right? You can get it from, if you're doing RA, you go to the outlets, and then you go to, if you're doing OA, then you go to a variety of the online store retailer to get the inventories. But if that's in your control. That means if I encounter a specific store with a very good sales, but you never heard about the store before, you want to do your homework to make sure it's a legit source, right? So that when you purchase the inventory, your receipt, your proof, your invoices will be, it's a legitimate. But so if the Amazon has a question about the store you order from, then you have a bad start in trying to convince Amazon. So I think as an upcharge sellers, either we're doing RA or OA, we need to make sure that we are getting a quality inventory from a legitimate source. That is the beginning. That makes the life so much easier, even for people who like yourself, Scott, helping people try to, solve the problem. But if we have a good start, we control the source at the beginning before the problem comes up, then that's a very good position to be in. So,
Absolutely. And in fact, that brings to mind something else when you mentioned outlet stores. Even if it's the outlet store for a specific brand, let's call it a Polo outlet store, or anything similar. One thing to keep in mind is that some of the inventory in those stores is not first quality. It's in that store for a reason, not just so they can discount it, but because maybe it was made specifically for the outlet store and was never in a real retail location,
mm.
or maybe it was a shelf pull from a retail location. Some of that inventory, there's something wrong with it. It's not something that a buyer is going to be happy with. And just because you find it there in the Polo store and you get a Polo receipt doesn't make it safe to sell something when you look at that and you think, this doesn't seem right. This doesn't feel right. I wouldn't be happy with this if I received it as a consumer. So keep that in mind as well whenever you're coming across something that seems like a good deal, and pass it up if it's too good to be true. Pass it up if it doesn't feel right. If you look at that and you think this just doesn't seem to be the quality of what I would expect for this brand. That's another way to just make sure that your sourcing is really clean.
That again, it's in the seller's control, which is great, right? I mean, when it's out of a control, then there's nothing that we can do.
For sure.
I'm looking at the PDF file, the invoice tip sheets that as
Yes.
this that calls it. It's it's long. It's 6 pages full of the information. I'm just taking a quick peek at it. Um, so my question
Some
is,
of that is
Scott,
diagnosed, of course. But
apply to
keep in mind, a lot of the stuff that's in that tip sheet isn't necessarily specifically for arbitrage sellers. So you'll see a lot of mention and instructions specifically for invoices, and that might not apply to you. Just don't worry about it. So focus on the parts that do apply if you only have receipts. A lot of people say, oh, Amazon will only accept invoices, and that's simply not the case.
Okay. That actually just my question. You read my mind. Oh,
Mm.
wow. It's kind of scary, Scott. But anyway, I think this is so valuable by looking at you put a lot of work into it with the pictures and all. So I think this is a part of the information from your training course, right?
Right. Yep. Yep. So I'm including this for your audience for free, but it comes out of one of the pieces that's in the account health training.
Okay. Great. Hey guys, so now making sure after you watch this video, reach out to me and then I will get this PDF to you so that you'll be able to compare to get a good understanding of what a legit retail receipt or invoice should be prepared, how done properly before you submit to Amazon. Now, s- in the in this sheet, we kind of so people receive the receipts or invoices through different channels. One is the one that comes in the shipment package, and then there's one you receive in the email, right? For people doing the online arbitrage. And then for people who go to the outlet doing the retail arbitrage, then they get, of course, they get the receipt at the end. Um, but sometimes people they will need to put, the store, the item, the tag, the store tags, and the receipt, they all line up together, and then they take a picture.
Which is super
And
helpful. I recommend that. I think that's a valuable way to approach it.
okay, can you tell us a little bit more about, I mean, what are those, how do you do that properly if you are doing the RA?
Well, you
You
really touched on it, but ultimately you want to have as much documentation and proof as possible. So especially if you're going somewhere, let's say like TJ Maxx, that notoriously they don't have an exact match for the item on the receipt as compared to the item in the store. And so, one of the things that people have been known to do successfully is to take a picture of the tag on the garment before you remove it, and take a picture of that next to the spot where it is on the receipt, just so because they have internal SKUs. And so, sometimes something like that would work. Um, I think that's what you were alluding to.
Yes. So for people doing the online arbitrage, can have you people can print it out and then use the pen to annotate the receipts and then take a picture and submit to Amazon. What about I print it out? I mean, I downloaded it in the PDF format, and then I use software to, draw the box instead of a
I don't
hand.
like that at all.
You don't like that at all?
Not at all. Now, there are some people who do that, and there's some people who suggest that, and it works for them. Um, I don't like it because I think it's so easy for that to look like it was digitally manipulated. That's why I recommend printing out the receipt, or taking a picture of the receipt, and then annotating it and then taking another picture. That one, you're not marking up the original document, which you don't want to mark up the original document. And two, since it's a picture of a physical copy, it doesn't look like it's been created or manipulated with Photoshop. And so, let's say you're doing OA and you get a receipt or an invoice in an email. I've seen people print off the email, and that hardly ever works. I've seen people submit something like where it says packing slip, or you know, other words that show up like next to invoice, like oh, what are the words that they use? I can't remember.
Mm,
Anything other than just invoice. Amazon doesn't view that as appropriate. But you want to be really careful to avoid anything that looks like you've created an invoice, created a receipt, or digitally altered one. That's why I recommend taking pictures of actual copies.
okay. So if I understand the whole process, and then I read the follow the guideline from the PDF you provide, and after I prepare the receipt and submit to Amazon, and if whatever reason Amazon rejected it, do I get get to understand what will be the cause for rejection?
Um, I would back up just a moment. Like, if you look at your receipt and you're like, this is a good receipt, there's nothing wrong with this receipt. There are some times where it might make sense to just take a picture of that and send it as is without changing anything. Wait until you get rejected before you annotate it further. That's an option. Um, but to your question, Amazon will almost never tell you that they are rejecting your receipt or your invoice or what's wrong with it. Sometimes they'll say we couldn't verify your supplier. Sometimes they'll say something else that gives you a pretty good idea that the problem is that they didn't accept your receipt. A lot of the time they're rejecting your POA, your plan of action, and it's not the receipt. But that's the biggest reason why I've tried to be somewhat systematic with the invoice tip sheet is I want to eliminate variables. I want you to eliminate variables. The more questions that you can remove from your mind as to why Amazon's not accepting your appeal, the better. And so that's why I've found over time, anecdotally through trial and error, do these things this way and get these results more consistently. And it's also important to keep in mind that that doesn't mean that that's the only way to do it. Um, if I tell you go do a backflip and I give you three things to do to accomplish that, that's not the only way to do a backflip. Somebody else is going to be able to do a backflip without following anything I said. And so some of it is trial and error. That's the thing about Amazon. It's somewhat tricky. It's not color by numbers. You know, you really do have to use your brain. You can take all this information from all these different disparate sources from, you know, this training and this seminar and these YouTube things and this course you took. But ultimately, you have to assimilate all of that, and you have to recognize that when Amazon asks you for receipts and they say, "Oh, we want 365 days full of sales for to be demonstrated in this receipt," sometimes they ask you for something that they really don't mean. You don't have to submit 365 days worth of invoices for one single ASIN. Sometimes I just would say try one receipt. That might be sufficient. In a lot of ways, it's helpful to approach things where you're giving them only what they ask for and no more. And that's just sort of trial and error to figure out, did I give them something that they didn't want? Did I answer a question with information that I knew that they didn't know? Usually that's a mistake. You don't know what they know, but they don't know what you know. So
Mm,
you don't want to tell them what you know unless you're sure that that's the answer to the question they're asking.
I
Now,
see.
all that sounds like gobbledygook code, but ultimately it's just, hey, pretend you're Amazon and pretend I'm the seller. You ask me a question, I want to answer it as succinctly and directly as possible with no additional information.
Mm. So I think even though if I submit the receipt, I mean, and they will address the issue the first time, I mean, submit the invoice once, that would be the ideal case.
Ideal.
So what I'm saying is sometimes it get rejected, maybe one time or even multiple times. But every time it get rejected, you kind of look at how you draft the POA or submit the receipt, prepare the receipt. You kind of learn what Amazon actually is looking for. Uh,
Yes. But use
so
your brain in that process. You know, a lot of people, you'll see people suggest in the forums, you'll see them on Facebook, you'll see all kinds of suggestions to say, oh, just keep submitting it. You know, submit it 10 times, 20 times until somebody looks at it with a different set of eyes and they approve it or they get tired of hearing from you. And I think that's a big mistake. I think it's
mm,
very important for you to read between the lines and try to figure out what's being rejected and why. And we talked about it in the last video, and that might be worth watching after you've submitted your plan of action or after you've submitted your receipt and it's been rejected and they say, hey, we need more detail or we need more information or whatever it is, that could be an appropriate time to call account health before you reply again. Instead of just submitting the same thing over and over again, figure out, did you miss something? Did you overlook something? Did you uh, fail to answer their question properly? Don't just do the same thing over and over because there's a high likelihood that you've missed something or that they're asking something different than what you thought, or maybe they're asking something different this time than what they asked for before as part of the same case. So it's really important to pay attention and not just assume that submitting the same thing over and over is going to get you further down the line.
perfect. So I think what Scott mentioned, the previous video we did together is addressing the question of how best to approach the account health a hotline, when to call and what to say when you actually call. That video is available on my website, so quicklist.com, as well as in the YouTube channel. And also it will be posted if you're in my shoe sourcing online Facebook group. You can find it in those three locations. And I'm going to post the information going along with this video as well. So Scott, I think we cover everything that we want to cover. And if people have additional question or after reading the PDF file and they want to talk to you, and how do they, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
If you go to my website, that could be the most beneficial, most efficient because there's a contact us form on there, and that's a good way to reach out.
Okay.
Ecomsellertools.com, ECOM as in Mary, 1M, seller, tools with an S.com. There's one other thing I think that's appropriate to mention for the invoices and receipts, and that's to make sure that you have a bulletproof, fail-safe way to find your invoices or receipts. You know, you get asked for it, and you really want to keep it all in one place, well organized. It really depends on your volume. Some people might need it separated by day, by week, by month, but at least have it where you can easily find it when you get asked for it, because you don't want to have it and then not be able to find it. That feels terrible.
Yeah, for people doing online arbitrage, you make sure that you keep a email copy of the the initial order receipt, as well as your the shipping, the item being shipped email. And also, if you're using Prep Center, check with your Prep Center to if they have a procedure or process to keep all the inbound shipment receipt, and or they might be able to scan in the folder for you, right? So just be prepared to have those ready. And I think that's been working out for me as well. That's just a very fundamental, but once you get into the habit of doing it, then you always be able to find it. Okay. So I think for this video, I'm going to put it together, and then you will be able to find it in the on YouTube and Facebook group, as well as on my website. And you know now where to find Scott. And if you want to reach out to me regarding the Scott's PDF, I will including the information along with the video, so you'll be able to request for the PDF. It's called Amazon Invoice Tip Sheets for winning appeals. So it's very useful information. And I hope that today's video and Scott will be able to help you to understand when it comes to prepare your receipt and or invoice for submission. And if you have any question, you can either reach out to me or Scott directly. I hope that would be helpful. And we're going to have more videos surrounding account maintenance, because that's part of the what Amazon seller do. Then you need to take care of the sourcing, and then you know how to ship them into Amazon quickly, and then you make sure you know all the option, try to get your item sold. That is the selling. And the most important part that has to do with the foundation of selling on Amazon is how to sustain your account. So on the YouTube channel, I create a playlist specifically for sustaining part of the business. So if you go there, you look under the folder, you will see all the videos we created talking to Scott or other specialists in this area. And I hope that you will find it to be a great resource as you continue to grow your Amazon business. Okay, everyone. And thanks again, Scott, for being with us today. And I like your cap. I like your background. And I hope the next time we see your cat to be with us. All right. So everyone, until next time, it's time to say bye. Have a good
Hey,
one.
thank you so much, Quincy.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.